Once upon a time, there was a king who ruled over a happy village. The village sold many popular products and services and drew visitors from far and wide. Behind the scenes, the king had a righteous band of data experts. They worked dutifully to collect all of the data needed by the kingdom and to distribute the data as needed to the villagers. But over time, the villagers hungered for more data and wanted it faster. Many villagers wanted to have their own data and not be dependent on the king's data team. Frustrated with the data team, they began purchasing their own data tools and their own data sets. The king's data team warned the villagers of the perils of creating their own data sets and proclaimed the benefits of having a centralized, clean data set with good governance, good security, and adhering to privacy. But the villagers ignored the king's data team and staged a rebellion. They demanded direct access to data and refused to use the king's data team's centralized data set. Before long, after failing to listen to the advice of the noble data team, the villagers found themselves with many different data sets, subsets of data, and they didn't know which data they could trust and believe in. Without good, trustworthy data, commerce in the village started to come to a standstill. No one wanted to visit the village, and soon the village turned to chaos and ruin. What was the king to do? He knew the villagers wanted direct access to their data without having to rely on the data team. But he also understood that the data team wanted centralized data, clean data, privacy-compliant data for very, very many reasons. How shall the kingdom have centralized, clean data while still providing the villagers the data they need so the kingdom won't fall into chaos? The king cried. Just then, some of the villagers introduced the king to a man who promised an easy solution to all of the kingdom's data problems. He promised to stop the chaos that had besieged the kingdom and bring order to the village. He brought with him a magical AI potion, and he claimed that this potion would magically bring all of the villagers the data that they needed, make all of the data problems go away, and bring about a data utopia. The king became entranced by the man's promise of AI, believing it would solve all of his problems. The man promised the king that he could provide the villagers and their visitors things like hyper-personalized experiences, predictive analytics, and real-time experiences. And the king was mesmerized. Just as the king was ready to invest all of the kingdom's gold in the AI man's dream, the noble data team burst in, and they approached the king, and they confronted him, and they explained that the man touting this easy AI solution was nothing but a charlatan. And they explained that the data team, if they don't have a clean, centralized source of data, AI will only magnify the current problems that they have in the village today. And AI is just a magnifier of that data. And so the king was more perplexed than ever. Who shall he believe? Shall he believe the man promising him an easy solution with AI? Should he listen to the villagers and their demands for data? Or should he listen to his trusted data team? The king decided to turn to his clever queen for answers. And the queen stepped in and said the answer is obvious. The queen explained that in the long run, it's absolutely necessary for the kingdom to have a clean, centralized data set that adheres to all of the privacy and governance that should be expected of a kingdom such as theirs, and that the data team must be given the authority to work with the village to have this centralized data source. The queen also explained to the king that once they have a centralized data source, AI could be extremely valuable. While the villagers had previously resisted the data team's attempts to build this unified centralized dataset, the queen was clever. She used that against the villagers and said, now we can use AI as an excuse for the data team to build what they have always wanted, and now the villagers will think it is their idea because they are getting the AI that they wanted. And lastly, the queen explained to the king that once the kingdom has a clean, trusted, centralized data source, there are tools available to be able to federate that data down to the villagers so that they can get the data they need without having their own data sets. But they also can have self-serve interfaces to access the centralized data source and not have to rely on the data team as they have in the past. The king was overwhelmed by the wisdom of his queen and trusted her sage advice. The king proclaimed throughout the land that there will be a centralized data source, and everyone, all the villagers, must bring all of their data to the centralized king's data team. Slowly, the villagers began to bring their data to this centralized team. That data team cleansed it, enriched it, and made sure it was compliant with all of the privacy and security guidelines. And once the kingdom had this centralized, clean, trusted data source, then and only then did they apply AI. And it was amazing what happened once they applied AI, because the growth was exponential of the value that they got from the data now that they had that centralized data source, and the data team was given the ability to do what they wanted to do. And lastly, this data source was then federated down to the villagers so that they can get the data that they wanted. But now it was AI enriched, entrusted, and cleaned. They then used this data to improve the products and services that they were offering to the villagers and those who came to visit them. Soon, all in the village was running better than ever. Commerce was running efficiently. Visitors were getting better products and services than they had ever experienced, and the village experienced a period of unprecedented growth and prosperity. The king and queen thanked the noble data team for their perseverance and their steadfastness during this chaotic period, and bestowed upon them the greatest gift of knighthood and showered them with gold. The end. My name is Adam Greco, and I am a product evangelist at High Touch, which is a composable CDP and AI decisioning tool. It is very difficult to make data warehouses interesting, so I hope you enjoyed that because it's kind of a nerdy topic. But there's a lot of truth in what I just shared in that story because I talk to customers all the time. And so what I want to do now is kind of tie things that I wanted to talk about today back to this story. So if you think about the knights of that time, they are really now the data teams of today being transported, but the same problems that the knights just conquered in that fairy tale exist in all of your lives today. Your organization has massive amounts of data, and you have marketers especially and other stakeholders who are looking to you for things like a 360-degree view of your customer. They want you to provide personalized experiences, and they want automated activation so that they can get the data out to all of the thousands of tools they're paying for on Scott Brinker's MarTech chart. So what's happened in the past is that there was this world where people were building their own data sets. And we understand how this happened because many years ago, There were internal data warehouses that data teams would own, and if you needed data from the centralized data team, it was a pain in the ass. You had to file a ticket or make a request and get a SQL code and then get a CSV file, and then that would pass among the different teams. And so what we started seeing happening is people frustrated with an internal data warehouse, just like the villagers were frustrated with the data team. And people went out and bought their own marketing tools. And the biggest among them, if you're dealing with customer data, is a customer data platform. And these packaged customer data platforms were a way that marketers could basically bypass all of you and say, we don't want to ever deal with the data team. We're going to just go buy our own customer database, and then we could do whatever we want. And we have a vendor that we could yell at and choke them if they're not doing good things for us. But then what happened is over the last couple of years, there's been a major transformation of the addition of cloud data warehouses like Snowflake, Databricks, and others that have made it much easier to get data in and get data out. And so most organizations, just like our villagers here, started bringing all of their data into the cloud data warehouse. Now, they may still have other systems like packaged CDPs, but most of the data is being backed up, and that's the one place you have all the data, because if you were to take all the data you're putting in your cloud warehouse into your CDP, that would be pretty expensive. So now we are in this situation, just like the villagers, we are all walking around and we don't know what data is right and what's the source of truth because we have two different sources of truth, and it's difficult to keep those in sync. And so we are just like the villagers. We're data rich, but we're like information and access poor. So what we're now seeing in the industry, and this is working towards our benefit, even though we didn't create this trend, is that the whole idea of a warehouse native or composable CDP is really taking off. And what we're seeing is people are getting rid of their packaged CDPs and saying, why do I need to duplicate my data? Why am I taking a subset of the data and doing analysis on it and doing audiences and activation instead of using all of the data? And so we're now seeing that most organizations are going straight to the warehouse because that's where they have the best governance, the best privacy, and they're saying, can't we just federate that data to Salesforce, to Braze, to Iterable, whoever needs it, and get them that data? And that is what our organization has been really pushing the industry to do, because that's what really gave birth to High Touch. Our founders actually used to work at one of the packaged CDPs and said, this is ridiculous. We're doing it the wrong way. We need to go where the industry is going. And so now we're starting to see clean, trusted data being federated out to anyone who needs it. So what we're seeing now is that just like in the story, we're seeing that composable CDPs plus cloud data warehouses and now AI, which I'll talk about next, are really starting to deliver what marketers have wanted. They want self-service access to the best data without having to wait for the data team, knowing the data is correct so they can activate on and use it for AI so they can do the 360-degree view, get personalized experience, and do any automation that they want for campaigns. Now, we have to talk about AI because that's just the big buzz right now. And so if you think about how do composable CDPs and all of these centralized data sets help AI? Well, as I alluded to in the story, if you don't have a centralized data set and you try to use AI on multiple data sets, AI is going to be confused, it's going to hallucinate, and you're going to end up in a mess. But more and more, we're seeing that companies like ours and others are saying, if you have a clean centralized data set, you can now have conversations with your data. You can now use AI to get charts and graphs, and ask your data the things you need to know. And this is going to become more popular. People are going to move away from dashboards and they're going to move more towards this chat interface to basically just keep asking questions, just like you do with ChatGPT and Anthropic. We also see a new trend popping up called AI decisioning. And the idea of AI decisioning is that if you have a lot of data about your customers and you trust that data, you can then use AI agents to say, here's my goals, here's the things I want to accomplish, and I want you to deliver different messages to all of my customers. I still need kind of human supervision. I'm going to tell you the messages, I'm going to tell you to create it, but I want you to go crazy and experiment. And within a couple of hours, AI is way smarter than us. It can figure out what works and what doesn't work, and then optimize those campaigns towards the outcomes. And the coolest part about this loop is that as AI is giving your customers experiences, they are telling you what works and doesn't work by what they engage with. And then those outcomes get stored back into the warehouse instead of being in some proprietary third-party tool. And then the warehouse gets smarter, and then those insights can be used for other types of marketing and activation. So what does this look like in real world? Well, this is just our version of AI decisioning at High Touch, where we have our customers go in and tell us of all the events that they have in their warehouse. What are the positive events and what are the negative events, so that we can train the AI, and then we give it a bunch of guidelines, like you cannot message this person more than 2 times in 48 hours because they're going to hate you. And you basically give it different creatives, different text that you want to share. And then the AI can look at things like their age, all the data points you have in the warehouse, and even things that aren't in your warehouse, like time of day, what type of product are we sending, and so on, and then personalize these experiences and then see what works and then save that back in the warehouse. And one of the coolest things that our clients have seen with this is that AI starts learning things that it would take humans years to learn. Like, we had one retailer that was doing cross-sells, and they didn't know really which of their products or categories were cross-selling better than the others. And then their AI agent went out and basically learned that these categories seem to be bought together and these products are bought together. And then all of that rich information could be stored back into the warehouse. So my advice to you as data teams, as I kind of wrap up here, is I believe that you should take advantage of the craze of AI right now, just like the Queen did, and use that as an excuse to go to your organization and say, listen, we should think about centralizing all of our data in a cloud warehouse. We should think about the governance and the privacy. We should mandate that all of our data, especially customer data, is in that warehouse, and use AI as the excuse to do that, because they are hungry for you to give them AI. And if you have that trusted data set, then they can become a partner of yours. And so just take advantage of the craze that's going on. And then if you need to kind of use the negative approach, you could explain to them how giving them all of these disparate data sets is going to confuse AI, and it's going to slow down the organization's ability to use AI towards its advantage. And so I believe that what we're going to see over the next couple of years is an unprecedented amount of growth by combining a cloud warehouse with that trusted data, with the most complete data set, with composability, especially around customer data with composable CDPs and being able to activate that, and AI. And this is what I want you all to do. Is I want you to be on the front page of your internal, corporate newsletter, bringing all of these things together to drive explosive growth at your organizations. So, to wrap up, these are the morals of my story to take home with you. And again, I'm going to share all these slides if anyone wants any of these afterwards. But to me, this is how I think about it, is I have found over time that organizations, for one reason or another, tend to resist building that one centralized data set. And there's lots of reasons for that, but you have to combat that, because that is what is going to separate you from your competition. Because in the data age, your ability to differentiate from your competitors is basically how well you are able to turn data into better customer experiences, better than your competition, honestly. So even though they resist that, you're going to have marketing and other teams that are always going to go off and try to build their own things. They're going to build their own data sets. They're going to work around you. You have to try to be a partner with them and say, we don't mind if you use these other data tools, but we want you to feed the data to these tools from the centralized data set, because that is how we get the best of both worlds. I believe that centralized data can be streamed effectively to marketers and to other stakeholders in a way that they don't have to get frustrated. They don't have to wait for the data team. You can provide that self-service so that you get the good quality data, but you also give people the speed that they want in order to get the data they want. I also believe that executives are going to fall in the trap of just thinking that they can just put a veneer over all of your data problems and just sprinkle AI on it and think that everything is going to get better. And it sucks, but you're going to probably have to be the ones to tell them that they're full of crap and that you just can't do that, because I truly believe that AI is a magnifier. If you have great data, I think AI is going to do amazing things for you. But if you have bad data, I think it's going to make things a heck of a lot worse. And as I mentioned, since AI magnifies every data situation, you just got to keep that in mind and keep reminding your stakeholders that they don't want to magnify bad data and bad business decisions. But once data is clean, centralized, I really do believe AI can add so much value. We're seeing whether that's collecting data, exporting data, activating data. It's just amazing some of the things that are going on right now. And as I mentioned, AI is a great excuse to use to basically build what you probably should have already is an improved and better centralized data store. So with that, I want to thank you for coming today. I tried to make this kind of short and sweet. We do have a booth that's literally right down the stairs from where you came in, basically right in front of the theater. That's right when you come out, right in front of the Women in Data. We have some amazing people down there who can show you what it looks like to actually activate data natively from the warehouse and use AI on top of it. So if you want to stop by the High Touch booth, please do that. If you want to get a copy of these slides just because you think they're kind of fun, if you scan that, you can connect to me on LinkedIn and just shoot me a note. And it won't be as pretty because there'll be a PDF version. It won't have all of the animations, but you'll be able to get the gist of it. And I'm also happy to give this presentation to any organization out in the audience. That's what I do for a living. I'm an evangelist, and so I get to give presentations for a living. So if you need to convince your stakeholders, your peers, that they need to think a little bit differently about the way they're storing data, I'm happy to go in and talk on your behalf without selling High Touch, just selling the concept and what's going on in the industry. So with that, I will thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful time at Big Data London. I will be at the High Touch booth if you want to ask me any questions. But thank you so much for coming. I hope you found this pleasant and enjoyable for anything related to data.